in the business world, all of these people that have now come to their home offices, they're loving what we love, and that's the autonomy and the freedom of their schedule. But everyone is missing that real world component and being able to interact with people. And
Welcome to 33 Tangents, a weekly podcast featuring a rotating panel of co-hosts that all work together in the same company but live in different areas of the world. The discussions cover a wide variety of topics, from digital analytics to working remotely to current happenings in business and technology. Our regular day-to-day conversations often go off in various directions, and the goal of this podcast is to share our ideas and find new ways to engage with others.
the elementary teachers drove around. They brought some of the police cars and fire trucks through the neighborhood with the teachers.
That's cool.
Yeah, pretty cool.
That's super cool.
That's really nice.
Well, you guys are hitting me on a good day today, man. The ETSU Board of Trustees approved mine and a handful of other folks promotions today.
Nice.
Oh.
Congrats.
So I'm a full professor now. I'm the highest peak of the academic ladder.
Congratulations.
That is awesome.
We're
It is
going to have
awesome,
a virtual party here.
14. So I had my tiers a little earlier today. 14 years at it, and that process is brutal. It's I started my application for promotion in September 15th. And it goes through committees and deans, and people can express how much they don't like you. And
does that really happen?
Yeah. I mean, I got dinged. I got dinged along. I mean, I don't have any problem being transparent about everything. I got dinged along the way by my college. My college, I had some papers that were in review, and they said, well, you're an amazing teacher. You're evidence of your teaching. So everything, the report card for the academic space is teaching, research, and service, right? And so you get measured based on the expectations in those three arenas. And you have to be able to get to a bar in all three of them. And it's really not enough to be, and this is where lots of what I do is different. Because, you can be an excellent teacher. You can be an amazing, service person and somebody that's just doing stuff for the community and industry and whatever. But if you're also not doing enough research, or you can't get promoted. And a lot of the stuff that I do crosses in between service and research. When I get asked, I'm going to be at the Midwest Digital Marketing Conference, virtual conference, which is happening in May, and that's a peer-reviewed invitation, kind of thing. But what happens when the person that runs it has a committee and they say, actually, we would like just for you to be a speaker. There's a topic we want you to be. So now, is that not service? I don't get a research. I don't get because I didn't submit a paper to it. I got actually asked to be a speaker at it. It's no longer. So anyways, it's those kinds of things. So and then there's always politics and stuff too. So, but my dean, my president, my provost, they all tend to like me. So
that's good.
And think I do good stuff. So
I guess every industry kind of has that. I don't know. Maybe that's a realistic expectation in academia. For us in the digital analytics space, they say, "Oh, you do analytics, so that means." Front-end development inside and out. It means you can do really deep analysis. You're probably also great with data visualization, and you're a statistician and you can craft personalization. I don't know anybody that is great at all of those at once. That's really hard to do,
Right. And I mean, if I was, I just would put quotes around your typical academic, which there's nothing wrong with being a typical academic. But I mean, if I if I spent my time really focused on publishing a lot in peer reviewed journals, which I do, but I don't, maybe not as much as some of my colleagues think I should do. I wouldn't, then there's an opportunity cost, right? And there's no question to what I'm about. I'm about transforming what I do in the education and in the classroom for student outcomes. That's what I got into this for. That's what drives me. That's really what I'm about. That's what drives me, to connect my students to you guys and others like you. And this is the position that I'm in, the position I'm in, and the field, the space that we're in. It moves so rapidly, and I'm someone that firmly believes that if you don't have your foot in it, you just can't bring value. And I think what's happening with COVID and everything in higher ed is this is the accelerant that COVID is the accelerant for what we have. And I think I wrote you guys, weeks ago and said, the whole virtual office thing that you guys have been talking about for years, this is the accelerant, right? We're all gonna, at some point, we're gonna get to a normalcy, whatever that means, but it'll get close to, whatever life was like before all this. It'll be changed, but the point is that there'll be a lot of things that will be different, just because we will have figured out, wow, it's actually more efficient for me. It's so much more efficient for me to have department meetings on Zoom. And I never thought about doing that before. And I can record them. Like somebody can't make it. I just go, oh yeah, just watch the recording. It's fine. I don't have to try to figure out 15, 20 people's schedules so that everybody can be there,
Yeah.
Yeah. One of the things I'm starting to hear about that, which I think this, everyone being forced to work remotely, I think is going to support, is people leaving the city or like close proximity to the big cities and moving out. Like I'm starting to hear the rumblings of almost like an exodus of city living. Now, does that mean people will never live in the city again? No, but I think you're going to see a lot more people moving to the suburbs, and not just the suburbs close to the city, but I'm talking like the suburbs out, maybe being an hour and a half to 2 hours outside of a major metropolitan area, because now that they've been able to prove that they can work remotely, or not just work, maybe it's even education in your case, they're able to complete what they need to complete remotely. They maybe just need to drive in once a week versus being there 5 days a week.
Yeah, totally. That's what I'm still working for up Siren Marine, and we just hired a new CMO who is awesome. Her name's Kate McKay. She came from Hasbro, and I was talking to her about this, and she said, she was telecommuting part of the week anyway for Hasbro for a long time, so she was kind of like, I'm not used to being in the office every day, and so I think that's just like you're saying, Jim. Entirely, out of the office, and we all know people. Well, you guys clearly, but even a lot of the folks in our business in the tech space and in the space that we're in together, they may be on the road for, especially sales folks. They're on the road 50, 60. That's what I talk to my sales friends, and they're just like, they're dying because they don't like, they're on the road and they don't like being on the road. But then when they're not on the road, they're like, oh my God,
they miss it.
I have to get on the road, me, I'm like, no, please. I'm good. Jason, I know you're a road warrior. You love traveling.
It's a funny thing. I was talking with a local entrepreneur here in Utah yesterday, and he asked me, he's like, so what's the first thing that you're going to do when this thing kind of settles out somewhere? And I said, I've actually started buying a few things for my car to start doing road trips, and not just any like named destination. I've actually met a lot of amazing people in small little towns I would never go to as a destination that I'm gonna make an excuse to go there. There's a guy up in Grace, Idaho, a town of like probably 3 or 4 thousand people that has a restaurant. I'm gonna make a trip just to go hang out at his restaurant.
Yeah.
And I'm so excited about doing that. I've done a lot of road trips in the past, but it was always about destinations, and it was seeing how fast I can get from A to B. And it's
Yeah.
like there's so much amazing stuff that happens along the way. Why not just go slow and enjoy it? So no, I don't like traveling for traveling's sake, but it's actually one of the first things I'm looking forward to is just kind of driving and just enjoying being out. I think we're appreciating all of the freedoms of movement that we had that
Yeah.
were quickly taken away, and we realize how much we need that. Even as like someone like me that's an extreme introvert, like I'm craving it. I miss going out to lunch with my friends and sitting in a restaurant, and I think it's amazing to see all of the pivots that everyone's doing to cope. Um, but I still miss some of the just close human contact,
Yeah.
Well,
So,
Suzanne and I had a very similar conversation maybe a week ago or so, maybe even 2 weeks ago. The first thing I told her is after this is over, she and I are definitely doing more traveling. We're going to make it a point to use my work flexibility, then her time off in the summer to go places. But then I said, like, I'm going to find like local coffee shops to work at more often. For me, I'd always get heads down during the day and just always work out of the home office. I'm going to take advantage, and I'm going to try to bake it into my schedule where I just go and hang out at a coffee shop or some kind of co-working space locally once a week, even just for a few hours, just to get out of the house.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean,
yeah,
it's crazy.
we always say that we have all this freedom and flexibility as a remote home, remote work from home, work from wherever, and then we never really fully take advantage of it. That's one of the things I'm hoping that we realize coming out of this is that we have so many like flexibilities and freedoms, but we oftentimes don't take advantage of it. And it's everything from just freedom of movement to I was talking to a few friends the other day. I said, you know what? I'm so upset at myself that we have this long list of things that, we were going to go up and have a campfire and hang out. We were going to go here, but it was always like, I have this meeting, I have this, and then we never got to it. And it's like, we got to stop doing that.
Yeah.
We have to enjoy, we're putting in a lot of work. You put in a tremendous amount of work to get this latest promotion. We have to enjoy the journey as well.
That's right. I mean, for me, it's like playing music with my buddies. I mean, I have my best friends are musicians, and like you, Jason, and I don't know about you, Jim, but I mean, I am really a hardcore introvert, and I'm very good at external things, and so they confuse me for someone who is really extroverted, you know. I'm just happen to be really, really good in presenting and being around people. And it's not that I don't like people, but it wears me out. When I was doing stuff with Adobe and going around the country and having dinners and all these kinds of things, I enjoyed that work so much. But man, that kind of stuff wears me out. And my mom gives me a hard time because she's like, "Oh, you're so extroverted," and I'm like, "No." I mean, when I was in grad school, I had people next door to me who would call me and they go, Dave and Angela, and they would call me and they go, "Steve, your car hasn't moved in a week. Are you alive?" Because I lived by myself. I wasn't married, and it's like, yeah, I mean, and I really like I could have entire weeks where I would walk. The only time I see people would be walking my dog, and especially during the summer, because I was just completely content, like you know. But I like now I sit there and I go, damn, I wish I'd make more time playing music with my buddies because those are like my best friends. Those are the people that can see me for like the 12-year-old that I pretty much am, like all the time. Um, they get the real view of me.
hmm
And I need that release too.
Yeah,
Um,
we all
and
do.
so yeah, so um, yeah, it's crazy.
It is. It is, and I apologize for I feel guilty for eating in front of you guys. But I haven't had a chance to eat, and this calzone is so amazingly good.
Let's do
Um,
it, man.
and speaking of the calzone, it's been amazing to see how everyone has supported and tried to figure out a new way of doing things. So, a company like this, they didn't have any kind of curbside pickup. They had to quickly spin it up and make it work. And it's amazing how smooth these things are operating. Um, what are you seeing? What are you doing, I guess, personally, and what's ETSU doing to kind of help make it a new or a different experience again? And I was running late to the podcast. We just had the teachers run through the neighborhood and wave to all the kids. It's, we have to be flexible and creative.
Oh,
Interested
that's
in kind of what you're doing.
yeah. So we had a really interesting transition. I think the timing for us was really excellent. We had spring break. I don't have my calendar, my March up here, but we had spring break the second week of March. And so just as things were like really ramping up, we got to a point like a few days before spring break where we were having some pretty significant meetings saying, we don't think we're going to end up having students come back. And and so that timing was really excellent for us. And I think it was excellent for our entire area, just being in Northeast Tennessee. Because when you have spring break, you have people that we have almost 15,000 people, students at our university. We have a med school, pharmacy school, and everything too. And so you didn't have that mass exodus and then mass return,
Mm,
where everybody, and we're a regional university, so a lot of folks aren't going to go real far, but some people are going to go do their spring break thing,
right.
and we all saw the videos of what that could look like in different
Yeah.
places in the country. And so our university, East Tennessee State was really smart to get in front of it. I think really, really, I mean, the leadership really has done a great job. And basically said like just a couple days before spring break, if you live in the dorms, please take whatever items you think you might need. Not necessarily move out, but just please take whatever items you think you might need if for some chance you were not going to come back. And I can't remember I'm kind of paraphrasing what I remember, but that was basically it. And then the next week, while everybody was gone, and it wasn't like this was like, let's wait until everyone's gone to decide this. It was just kind of like how everything was transpiring, because there were new news every single day. And
Still
um,
is, it seems like, huh?
Still, yeah, still is, and so I think that the university was really smart. I basically, as the chair of a department, we got about 400 students that study with us. I've got close to 20 folks that were that are colleagues, and so I just basically said, look, we're going to shut everything down. Like, we're not going to let students check out gear over spring break because we have, thousands of pieces of gear, cameras, microphones, all kinds of stuff. That, part that if you study journalism or filmmaking and that kind of stuff with us, you have access to that gear. And the last thing we want is like a whole bunch of people to go do whatever they're going to do and bring back a whole bunch of contaminated gear because
Right.
again we don't at that time we don't know like how long's this stuff, how do you got to clean it, like all these different things. um but I mean we also had events and Summit was shut down. Like Adobe was very early and very progressive as they are, to say no Summit, and we had a bunch of students that were going to Summit. I was teaching at Summit again, all day workshop. And so all those kinds of things happening and seeing that stuff happen, really, I think, made us be, I think we're really one of the better universities in the sense of how we decided and move forward with stuff. And still to this till still right now, we are not to, we've been asked to not have any engagement with students until August 15th, like face to face engagement.
Hmm.
No events on campus. We first shut down international travel and then all travel. Um, and and so that has been, I think, really smart. I think the other side of it is, oh my gosh, how do you transition a biology lab to online?
Mm-hmm.
How do you transition a capstone filmmaking class to online? How does and then also just kind of like the professors that I'm full professor now, so I can wear pajamas to work, and um, I've been tenured for 7 years, so I could have done that already. But the point is that you know you have people that just go, I'm not going to adopt technology. you know, I know of people on campus who refuse to use the learning management system of our university. Before any of this, just like, I'm not using that. Like, that's not how I teach. Or not really responding to emails. And that kind of stuff. And now all of a sudden, yeah, you've actually got to take all three of the classes you're teaching online. And so really trying to put in all the different pieces of the puzzle to make sure that the folks that can be adopters, and helping those folks. And then the students also, because we're a regional university in Appalachia. And 30% of our students that graduate are first time college students, first time in their family college students. So they don't have the support of somebody in their family circle that can say, yeah, keep on going, Billy. This is going to be worth it to you, because they don't have that support. And now all of a sudden, they also don't have a job, right? All
Yeah,
these
right.
students, they don't have jobs. Like, most of them are doing some kind of service gig, um, gig worker of some sort, and they don't have jobs. And now, wait a second, I don't have a job. I'm now living back at home. And now you want me to be in class at 11:15 on Tuesday?
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of like the bottom of the priority list for me right now. I am actually trying to survive. Um, and so it's really like we've moved to, like a lot of universities, we've moved to pass fail options for students. And again, I think we've been pretty progressive. My wife works for University of Louisville. She's been teaching online. And that's what she does for them. And so she's been really helping a lot of her colleagues kind of transition into it. But they adopted that pretty early. And you really can take any class pass fail, but you have to declare that that's what you want to do at the beginning of a semester. And then, me as a professor, I wouldn't know if you're taking it pass fail or if you're taking it for a regular grade. And so you just get your grade in my class, and then it's just, if you took my class pass fail and I gave you a D, you'd get a pass. And if you got an A, you get a pass. And I wouldn't know. I just put in the A, and it just, it magically
Yeah,
happens. And so now what we've done, which I think is really, again, I think, hats off to ETSU, basically told students, you can finish the class, and then once you get your grade, you have, I think we're giving them 2 weeks to decide, if that D in Marshall's class, if you don't want that, you can change that to a pass. So kind of given that, and I think that's like a great way for these students to be able to, feel a little bit more relaxed about things.
for sure.
Um, I'm fortunate that the folks that I get, my colleagues, um, I don't have really any students complaining about the transition. But I'm in a technological department, and we have a lot of, we have a great relationship with Adobe. So we had, so all of our students have Creative Cloud, and so they don't need the lab to go do their work. They could do a lot of that work in that kind of a space. So that was really good. But again, going back to, like, if you're chemistry or biology, um, how do you do that? How do you transition? And then on top of it, how do you transition the content? But then how do you transition the person that's responsible for delivering the content to be able to be in the space of the recipient, the customer, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's a bad word in education. I don't think it is, but some of my colleagues may disagree with that. But these are all customers, and I think that's where we're going to really see, um, universities. recognize budgets. And I mean, not to say that they don't, but I mean, universities were already having. I mean, I was on the road with Adobe as the industry expert for higher education for DX for the Experience Cloud for a couple of years. So I mean, my colleague there, Jonathan Hammond, he would like to say, universities will spend $60 million building a building, but they won't spend $500,000 creating for an SLA to create a great digital experience. And now all of a sudden, you better be thinking about that. That's the
Yeah.
accelerant, right? Like, because the schools that were doing that before, they're going to thrive, and the schools that are laggards are going to die. I mean,
It's
that's
like
just
the business world as well. Yeah, I mean, I think we're seeing a lot of parallels there. I'm incredibly sad that we didn't have Summit in person, because I think we could have talked for 8 straight hours and I would have barely scratched the surface on things I want to pick your brain about.
yeah,
So
we would have had fun.
so maybe next year, maybe I need to take a trip out when we can travel. That would be an epic road trip. Um, and as you're talking, I'm trying to prioritize in my head all the follow-up questions that I want to ask you. So I'm not sure where to start, but I have a couple. So you mentioned learning management systems.
Mm.
We're seeing those really get pushed to their limits right now. Elementary, secondary, higher ed. Everyone's trying to make this work. I I'm interested in your thoughts on what the future for technology in learning looks like. Um, so my high school student who's a senior, hats off to the teachers. They were thrown in a pretty much no-win situation to try to make this happen. They have been probably working more hours than they've ever worked before to make this happen. But it's clunky. It's like 3 or 4 different technologies that they have to log into and manage and navigate. And I saw my student struggling. He's like, I don't know. Do I log into this one, or how do I go over here? Like, what does this mean? What does the future look like for learning management systems? Speaking about experiences, where do you think this is going to be the accelerant to push them to provide a better experience across the board?
Yeah, absolutely. Jim and I were talking about that too before you got on. I mean, just and we all. I mean, I think all three of us just agree 100% on that. I mean, it's like all of a sudden you've never taught online, and now a week later you're teaching everything online. Like you're awesome. You're like, I mean,
Hmm.
to be
Yeah.
able to try to swim in that, and at the same time, like I mean, I have a kindergartner, so um clunky is like not even the word for it, just because. And I mean, he's at one of the highest rated schools. It's on our campus. It's a year-round school in the state. And so I mean, the teachers there are amazing. His teacher is freaking unbelievably amazing. But you have, like, when I get into his Google Classroom, I see there music and art and counseling. Like, okay, did the counselor really need to put a portal in here for my kindergartner? Are they gonna have some deep conversations? How does that make you feel? I'm just kidding, but I mean, but I think you kind of had, the way I looked at it was, you kind of had all these people that said, "Oh my gosh, how do I do what I do?" And I'm going to go try to find the things that will help me do what I do. And now we're just going to throw everything at these kids, right? And that's just a product of what happened. It's not like anybody's fault. um, I think, to your question, the learning management system that we're going to need, the way that we need to think about it's not necessarily just the learning management system, it's just the approach. It's being able to have engagement and experiences. There's plenty of research and there's plenty of support around the fact that if you just put stuff on, some people just think online learning is just putting up a slide deck and some chapters that you need to read and take a test, and that's online learning. Um, that's horrible. Um, Some people think it's just like canned things. So like I'm going to pre-record this and then I'm going to put up the slide deck and now that's learning, right? Or it's just the discussion boards, right? And so um, I've been doing this stuff I've been teaching more than 10 years online, at least every semester, at least one class, right? Um, and I mean, I don't think I clearly don't feel like I have everything figured out because it's not in my mind space to ever think that I have much of anything figured out. But I do think that you know, I never have canned lectures. You know, I have very few canned lectures. I mean, every week I get in, I have some kind of asynchronous class, I record it, I ask students to ask questions, I give feedback. When discussion board kinds of things, I don't just sit there and have, you know, it's really a lot of learning management systems, the heartbeat of that experience is a discussion board. And so, you know, you post a question and then it's just it's a, what you call it? It's a group, um, what's the website that has the, like Reddit or whatever, you know, like that kind of a format. Right. So you just have these threads and you're just, you know, it's kind of bulletin board, whatever. Um, but like does never like as an instructor, I hate those things because if I have 20 students and they all answer something, I'm trying to figure out something creative to say to each one of them. And by the time I get to the fifth student, I'm like, I'm running out of juice here, you know, because like you basically said exactly what this third student said, but I got to figure out a way to make you feel like I paid attention to you differently, or like I want to bring some new knowledge. And so what I did was like early on, it's like, you know what, the more efficient way to do this is to go, okay, this is a question I asked everybody. I really in a video format like this, right? This is a question I asked everybody, and I really like what Jim said about this topic. You know, one of the things that he pulled out on this, and Jim and Jason also had very similar answers in what they said. And then, you know, bringing in examples and different kinds of things from the web to try to like number one, when people like the feedback I've gotten from that is just like people like to hear their name, right? They want to actually see the class because they want to see did Steve say something about me to that this time, you know? And then again, it's just like it's not canned, and you can't teach. And the other part of it is you can't teach our stuff canned because whatever I taught last year at this time, it's a little different. It's not
Yeah.
like it's not like changed like crazy, but there's some new vendor or there's some new enhancement to something, or you know, there's a better way to do something. And you know, and if you're taking a digital marketing class and you're watching videos that were recorded 3 years ago, it's not a good class, you know.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, so I think the learning management system of that the experience, let's just call it the experience. I think the learning management system is one piece of it. I think it's how do we create interactive experiences with students
Hmm.
and deliver it in a way that they expect the experiences to be delivered, you know.
Yeah, it's such an important point. I think across industries, um, you know, we're focusing on education and higher ed, but we're seeing something similar to what you described happening in lots of companies. Be it, you know, you have companies panicking right now that never really invested heavily in that digital footprint. They had a site up, and sure, there was pieces of their ecosystem there, and now they're being forced to do everything digitally. And a lot of them are taking the approach of, well, let's just take what we did offline and jam it into a digital container. And it doesn't work. You know, you have to think about how this is a new experience and a new interaction, and you have to really cultivate that experience in the digital world. It takes a lot of thought and a lot of deliberate action to make that happen.
Yeah. And I think education for a long time, I mean, um, there's a guy that I have a serious man crush on, Scott Galloway. And he's an NYU professor at Stern and got a great podcast called Pivot with Kara Swisher from the New York Times. But you know, Scott Galloway was one of the first people that I heard say, um, and I mean, again, like I just think this has been a time coming if you went and saw me 2 years ago speaking about Experience Cloud for Adobe in higher ed, you would have heard a lot of this same thing. It's just this is education and healthcare are two of the biggest disruptable industries in the sense of customer experience, and because education forever has just been, we got the same model. You should come study with us. You should pay your money, and now all of a sudden, with online, there are no, like we were talking about, there are no boundaries, borders, right?
Yeah.
And I can go study anywhere, and I'm going to go study where I'm going to get the very best experience, and where I'm also going to get the very best credentials, right? Because basically, as much as universities don't like to even talk about it, I mean, when you are getting, an education, you're getting certified, just that. And it's not like you're getting Google certification or something. Although, like, we like to bring those into what we do. But the thing is, you're getting a stamp on you that says, I'm trainable, I can work hard, I can get along with others, I can navigate things, I have a breadth of knowledge in liberal arts, and I am somebody that is going to follow through. Because if you're going to get a degree, you have to do all those things, regardless of what kind of degree you get. And I think that's going to get challenged, because you do have schools that have been trying to be in the online space that have, are degree mills. Um, and, I'm not going to name any of them. A few of them are for-profit ones, and they're not really the ones that you would think of either, because those can be pretty good. But there are some of them that are just degree mills, and, and those guys are going to get squashed. And a lot of these universities that try to create revenue from other things, I mean, we're just giving back as ETSU millions of dollars for dorms and food plans, right? Refunding. And because these students they're not on campus,
Right.
and they've prepaid, and that's the
Right.
right thing to do. But that ends up being, that's part of the ecosystem of the university. So what happens when that ecosystem goes away? And what happens when budgets start to shrink down, and that class that you taught that was like super focused on whatever discipline you do, and it had 5 students, right? So it wasn't like it's not like crushing moneymaker deal. It's like the higher ed, it can be that very, very deep dive something, right? Those things are going to be threatened, because the big lecture classes and the classes that were those revenue generators, they offset those other things. They offset some of those topics that are not necessarily the most popular topics, or even the most like, things that people are going to put on. You're not going to get hired, because of some of these things that you might study, or some of these classes you might study that you just might be curious about because you want to learn more about. I'm afraid those kinds of things might start disappearing, because we're not going to put this faculty member that makes X amount of money to teach these 5 students. We're going to not hire these adjuncts to teach the bigger classes, so that we're going to put you back into the bigger classes. You know what I'm saying? So it's just,
Yeah.
like where my wife is, she's at one of these universities where if you make over a certain amount of money, you're getting your salary cut. And that's not happening at my university yet. But I can see that. I mean, universities have been. There's 5,000 universities in the United States. There's like 70 in Australia. I mean, think about that. My numbers might be just a little bit off, but I mean, that's the difference is huge. And so, how do all those universities survive? Especially when a university like Purdue can merge with a for-profit, and then take the Purdue brand and say, we're nonprofit, we're Purdue, and you can study with us anywhere.
Yeah,
That's freaking
and
brilliant,
I
by the way.
it is, and I want to follow up on it. I have a question I'm going to ask before, but I want to put this out there so I don't forget to ask you about your thoughts on enrollment, how this impacts enrollment, and how universities are thinking about offering different products. But first, I want to ask you, just from a selfish perspective, what you guys are thinking about fall semester. So I have a senior. He's planning to play soccer at a school 2 states away in the fall. The transition from senior year to freshman in college is incredibly difficult, let alone throwing this on top of it with so many
Right.
unknowns. He's nervous. He's like, am I even going to go to school now? Like, what happens to my soccer scholarship? Like all of this stuff. And it's difficult. So I'm interested in kind of what you're thinking fall semester and what the school is doing to help incoming freshmen through a time that's already difficult for them to make that transition.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that we're just kind of checking out what's happening. I think we're like, to answer your question, we're full speed ahead. So, we have no plan of not being open and not doing what we would be doing. Now, that's all very much subject to change, and um when I was, thinking about the topic for this and getting on with you guys, um, I was going to do a whole bunch of prepping, but then I took a nap. But
It's
um,
always better when we just come on like fresh
I
and
know,
no
I know.
preconceived thoughts
But I
here.
did, but I did run up on a Chronicle of Higher Education list of schools, and I think this is particularly pertinent to what you're asking. So, like Boston University leaning towards in person, Brown University leaning towards in person, California State University starting fall semester online, um, Center College block scheduling. So they're actually changing how they deliver the you know uh, parameters of how they deliver content. Clemson University, very very progressive, very great CIO there, exploring a range of scenarios from in-person classes to entirely online. So basically, at ETSU, what we've been told is that we are moving ahead just as we would, but be prepared to be hybrid if necessary. So if we have to go, 4 weeks or the rest of the fall semester because the flu and all these different scenarios that we're hearing about on the news happen, then be ready to say, okay, we're going to flip the switch and we're going to be online for the rest of the semester. Um, so I think that, and we're one of these universities that has been threatened for a long time. I mean, we're one of these universities that, in the sense of our enrollment, an awesome president who has come in with a very aggressive agenda to grow our campus and to grow our enrollment. And we have not been successful doing that. And there's a lot of external and internal factors to that really we don't need to talk about so much. Not that I'm not afraid of talking about them, but it's just in the weeds. But I think the thing is that you have you have these concerns about budget and keeping. How do we keep we've just been operating on keeping the lights on, and right now is when we would be bringing all these students like your kid on campus for orientation and all those things, right? And so now we're doing like orientation and advising virtually, and I'm hearing and reading things about students taking a gap year just to figure out what might happen, and I think that's a very real trend, and that is going to be very detrimental to universities, because all of a sudden, if you pull
Yeah.
out a whole bunch of you pull out 2,500 kids out of our incoming freshman class, and you pull out, we're one of those campuses that you have to live on campus your first year. You have to have the meal plan, like you have to do all these things. What happens to all the jobs that are surrounded but
Yeah.
with that, you know? And I
So
mean,
much
this has
impact.
just been, I can tell you as a chair, like I've had to tell my dean sent out a note and said, We need to know who your second command and your third command is, just in case you get sick and your second command gets sick.
Mm.
You know, just kind of that's just
Yeah,
crazy.
yeah, it is. Um, Jim, you're gonna have to keep us honest on time because I can just keep going and going and going. But I do want to ask a two-part question around what do you see this having from an impact perspective on enrollment numbers, not just ETSU, but just higher ed in general. And a follow-up to that, um, are universities starting to talk about having different measures other than enrollment for four-year degrees? Are there going to be other types of learning products and solutions that universities will look to pivot to in order to help smooth out some of these disruptions that may continue for a year or two?
Oh, yeah, the answer to all that is yes. I think that, when you have a school that has a 18% acceptance rate, they clearly have an opportunity to be successful. Because even at the let's just call it the worst education experience possible. And I'm not talking about that university, but just in general, right? Because it's the total normal curve, right? I mean, you have the people who are just going to be super innovative and they're going to be like just crushing it in the sense of how they deliver that product. But then you're going to have your early, your normal folks, and then you're going to have the laggards that are going to just be the ones that like, oh, I never looked at email before and I'm not going to start now. So, you know, um, and I think that what you're going to see across the board will be lots of private universities that are liberal arts universities disappearing. Um, but that was predicted before COVID.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to accelerate this. And then what I think you're going to see these super brands, right? I mean, they are luxury brands. You're going to see the super brands who have those very low acceptance rates, that are going to be going, you know what? We could take our brand and our product online and we could infuse a whole bunch of capital into an amazing learning management experience. And we could hire people from Amazon and from Google and from, Adobe and Apple and stuff. And we can hire those people to deliver this ridiculously awesome education experience. And 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 we could scale it, you know um in a lot of ways. The Southern New Hampshire model
Mhm.
is, the Southern New Hampshire model. When you look at their growth curve, I mean, is exponential, unbelievable. When you look at how they've done things, they've taken a nonprofit brand that's it's a real. It's not like somebody just made up the university. But none of us really knew about it until they started spending all this
Right.
money on advertising and stuff. And they do a really good job with what the product they offer, the people that they hire, um, you know, uh, all those kinds of things. I mean, like I said, I mean, when I was doing that role for Adobe, I had to talk to them a little bit about that, and those kinds of things. Western Governors is another one that has looked at education from a price perspective and said, we're going to be like a really great deal for somebody. We're going to deliver a really great product. Again, a nonprofit. We think of some of these. We think of anything that we see on TV. We go, that must be a for-profit. That must be a Phoenix, right? And they're not. So I think I think we're going to see the mega luxury brands that are going to go, okay, this is a great opportunity to take, the California system or whatever. I mentioned Purdue. Purdue is, if I give you a choice, I'm going to give you a degree. I'm going to pay for your degree. You can go to the University of Phoenix or you can go to Purdue. I mean, again, like University of Phoenix, nothing wrong with it. They do some good stuff, right? But in terms of your own personal brand,
Yeah.
like, which one are you gonna, if I'm going to say to you, you can go to ETSU or you go to MIT. I mean,
Well, that's a much harder one to choose between.
Right. Yeah. Sure. So, I mean, those are the kinds of things that I think we're going to be struggling with,
Yeah.
um, because we're going to be competing against that product. Now, I can also say to you, like, knowing the politics of what happened at Purdue, there was not, the faculty senate at Purdue was not in favor of how they did that, and I still don't know the current status of that. But they really, the faculty senate thought this is going to water down our brand. It's not going to end up being the Purdue that people know about for engineering and computer science and entrepreneurialism. It's going to end up being a watered down brand. Um, so, but I think that I have long thought that what higher education needs is to bring in people that know customer experience in the retail and in the, for-profit space, not for-profit education, but in the for-profit space. Bring them in and start to have them ideate with educators about how do we create just a fantastic CX
Yeah.
for higher ed.
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. There's been a growing trend of people uh, bad mouthing, I guess, for lack of a better word, higher ed, that we don't need it. You can learn all this stuff online, and you can, right?
You can learn a ton.
The
I learn a ton online.
I do too. I'm a huge consumer of educational videos on YouTube. Probably, I'm scared to look at my hour usage on there because it's probably insane. Um, but I tell them that for me, the experience of college is where my value was. I mean, sure, I had some good classes that I still remember, but the classes were, to me, secondary to that entirety of that experience. And that's something that can't be just replicated in a digital world. And that's where I think there is going to be some kind of in between ground. And we're seeing it in both higher ed and in the business world. All of these people that have now come to their home offices, they're loving what we love, and that's the autonomy and the freedom of their schedule. But everyone is missing that real world component and being able to interact with people. And they want kind of the best of both worlds. And I'm assuming maybe higher ed goes down a similar path where, yeah, all of this knowledge eventually you can get online, but who's going to think about the experience of what college really is about?
That's true. I mean, undergrad at the University of Florida. I mean, I lived that exactly what you just said. I mean, I would never want to take any of that back ever. You know, maybe maybe some of the maybe some of the run-ins with the law, but other than that, yeah, those are still moments. I mean, those are still moments that they frame who you are. Um, but I think that
We were all a little stupid moving out and going to college for the first time. I had the police show up at my apartment because I thought it would be cool to decorate our apartment with these flasher barriers that they had at a construction site across the road. So I drug them up to our apartment. Little did I know that at night that was flashing, and it was, you could see it out the window. Cops show up, and I think we all have a couple stories where
yeah.
the cops showed up at our dorm room.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the fact that, I know what a taser feels like is probably that's enough of a story for me to share.
Well,
But
we'll probably take that story offline, although it might be a good offline story.
um but I think that's totally right, man. I mean, it's just the friends and the camaraderie and all those kinds of things that you have, and that's probably the thing that bothers me. One of the most things that bothers me about this is that those students got that opportunity to walk across the stage ripped from them, and to have that moment, for high school students too. I mean, to have that for your son. I mean, to have that ripped out, um, that's devastating. And trying to, like, we're doing some things right now to try to create some kind of virtual thing. And I mean, we got people that are like really smart that are doing some really great stuff, but it's not going to be, and everybody knows that it's not going to be what it was going to be, where like you walk in and we've got the whole Star Wars music, happening, the celebration, that whole thing. And it's like, that's my favorite thing. I feel like I'm in Star Wars when I'm walking in with my Harry Potter outfit on and everything.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, and, uh, and we're not going to do that.
Yeah.
And, but I think, these, I really don't think that much. I really have belief in the American ingenuity to solve problems and to figure out how do we do testing and how do we figure out a way to make these environments safe, because it's not just a campus environment, it's like life. um, and at the same time, I'll tell you, I'll share with you a feeling I had the other day when our state is one of these states that we're not sheltering anymore, like after the 27th or something, like businesses are going to open up, right? So I mean, so I think you have that whole kind of like a small subset of the population that are out there, saying that kind of stuff and protesting. But the thing is, like when I started seeing that stuff, I thought, wow, I'm here with my wife and my son, and we're sheltering in place. And we do what you talked about, Jason. We go get takeout, and we're going to I'll go get wings tonight and drink a lot of beers to celebrate my deal today. But and all takeout and stuff. But I started thinking, wow, this is all going to end, and then this is going to be this moment in time that we think about 2 years from now. I go, remember when we were all sheltering in place,
Yeah.
and remembering, and it's going to be like this really amazing. This is like the silver lining, but it's going to be like this really amazing transformational time, with tremendous sadness, clearly.
Right. Yeah.
But it's going to be this time that's going to be a changing time. It's going to be more profound than 9/11, or because it affects everybody. I mean, when we saw the planes fly into the building, that's in New York. I mean, profound, horrible. But, I mean, I was in Gainesville, Florida. I'm like, that's in New York. This is really scary, but not really for me, because,
Yeah.
that's in New York. But this is like, the guy down the street, that was that the dad in my son's pre-K, he's got corona, virus. So, I mean, he's in my neighborhood.
Right. We all know someone.
Yeah. So I think that's the difference. But going back to what I was saying, it's like, wow, I mean, as hard as this is, having a 6-year-old ninja in the house, it's going to stop at some point.
Yeah.
And so it's always just trying to go, let's just make it a good day. Like,
Yeah.
let's try to figure out how do we make this chaos that we have. I mean, I was in here in this room. This was a dining room, at one point, and now it's like fully teaching and everything in here. I was in here one day and my wife's like, you need to get doors. You need doors, and so I ordered some doors from Lowe's and I put them in myself, and they look janky as all get out. But, but you just start figuring out how you do stuff. And
Yeah. I think we're figuring out we're a lot more resilient and a lot more capable of solving things than we realized. And I think it's a good thing. And I agree with you. I think having all the kids home and having that family time, it's good for me to reflect on, because I felt like I had a pretty slow, laid back lifestyle. But it wasn't until this where I realized that I was pretty stretched thin, and we were always running from A to B and just not really slowing down to just enjoy being in each other's company. And it's as horrible as the situation has been, and people that are just devastated by the impacts of this. I was thinking, man, I'm gonna kind of miss having this slower lifestyle with the kids at home and being able to have all these experiences that maybe I wouldn't have had before.
I know I mean, again, that's what I started thinking about. I started going, do I really want this to end? I mean, I hate to say that out loud. I mean,
Right.
but I'm just saying, like, as a family unit, just talking about, me as a family unit, not all the external terrible
Yeah.
stuff
Yeah.
that's happening, right? But just like, this is an experience we would have never had.
Yeah.
And just as being tasered, it changes your perspective of things,
Yeah.
and so I mean, the way I look at things, I mean, I got like 5 things in my life that I mean, less than 5 things that I sit there and I go, was there any value? I can't find the value point of whatever that thing was, what did I learn from that experience? Like almost next to nothing. And if I want to stretch myself, I can try to make something up. But
Hmm.
otherwise, like all this crappy stuff that could, that's happened in all of our lives, I've found something that I go, that made me grow, that made
Yeah.
me, think about things differently. And so,
Yeah. No, it's for sure. I think we're on the same wavelength. I'm guessing we probably should wrap up. We've been going forever, and again, like I think we could just go on and on and on, and I would never get tired of the conversation. So I appreciate you willingness to come back and join us again and again. I think your episodes tend to be one of our most downloaded episodes, and you've probably seen some of the conversations on Twitter. People love when you are on. So really appreciate you filling us in with your knowledge and wisdom. And if Jim will allow it, I'd love to have you back as often as you want to come back here.
well, dude, I mean,
Love the conversation.
that's all. I don't know, man. I feel like I listen to you guys so much. You and I, Jason, when we first started talking years ago about, this agenda that I have, that we're still doing some crazy stuff, and maybe we'll talk about that. We've got a partnership with a company that we're really bringing in a lot of, uh, video and branded content production, taking a company and mixing it with an educational institution. And that's something that I'm like, okay, now how are we going to do this with all this happening? And then we're going to be the first accredited program from the Digital Marketing Institute. They've got about 50,000 members across the world, and they've got, Google and Facebook and all these folks on the board of directors producing content. And I think that's, going back to the question that you asked, I think that's part of, there's a portal there. There's a whole bunch of content that's not developed by us. It's developed by professionals that we're going to be using to help teach the stuff that we do, but also bring in all those voices in a very massive way in. And there's nobody else that's been doing this in the States. So we're the first to do that. We just finished that this week. So that's a pretty exciting thing. So, I think it's just trying to figure out all these different things, but you got so many awesome guests on your show. I'm surprised so many people want to slum with me, but
It's true, right, Jim? I don't think I'm making this up. I think it's
No, you're not.
it's absolutely true.
The episodes where you've joined us have been some more of our higher rated ones.
Well, thanks. Well, it's fun talking to you guys, and I'll do it again as soon as you ask me. So, whatever. And what's so funny is none of us have ever met, and we've spoken more on this podcast than we ever have in real life.
Yeah.
And I don't know if it's because I just have always loved the show that I just feel like I know you guys. But anyway, it's pretty easy to do.
I'm gonna have another tear here. Cool.
But, it was awesome having you, and definitely we'll have you back for another one.
Good. Thanks, guys. Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you.
All right.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of 33 Tangents. If you enjoyed what you heard, please rate and review the show on your favorite podcast aggregator so others can find us. If you would like to reach us, you can do so by emailing podcast@33sticks.com or on the web at 33tangents.33sticks.com. 33 Tangents is a production of 33 Sticks, an analytics boutique.